You are walking down a claustrophobic, narrow alleyway. The year is 50 AD, right in the heart of ancient Rome. Sun has just dipped below the horizon. You hear a sharp footstep echoing directly behind you on the cobblestones. Your heart races. You snap your head around to look, but the darkness is so absolute you cannot even see your own hands. Today, we banish the night with the simple flip of a switch. But for 99% of human history, sunset did not mean relaxation. Meant the world no longer belonged to you. So, how did an ancient megacity survive 12 hours of total darkness without a single streetlight? Before we shine a light on this terrifying historical mystery, if you are fascinated by the hidden origins of human behavior, subscribe to Primal Mind. Let us start with a staggering fact. At its peak in the 1st century, Rome was a sprawling metropolis housing roughly 1 million citizens. But the number of public streetlights illuminating those winding, chaotic roads? Exactly 0. When the sun went down, the city vanished. To step outside your front door after dusk was to step into an unpredictable, pitch-black void where the rules of civilization collapsed. The ancient night was a literal death trap. If the desperate muggers and thieves waiting quietly in the shadows didn't get you, then the uneven cobblestone roads, the open, disease-ridden sewers, or the stray chamber pots casually tossed from third-floor windows certainly would. You might naturally wonder, why not just carry a flaming torch to see where you are going? It seems completely obvious, right? Sure, that worked if you were a wealthy politician surrounded by armed bodyguards, but for the average Roman citizen, a torch was a nightmare. In a densely packed city built largely of wood and narrow escapes, a single dropped torch could burn entire neighborhoods to ash, and it frequently did. So, if carrying a massive flame was a public hazard, how did the city not collapse into chaos every single night? To solve this mystery, we first need to understand why the dark is so universally terrifying to us in the first place. It is not just a silly childhood phase. The fear of the dark is an evolutionary survival mechanism deeply hardwired into your DNA. Sight 1. Deep inside your brain sits a tiny, almond-shaped structure called the amygdala. It acts as your body's primary threat detection center. Sight 1. When the sun sets and your visual cortex gets starved of information, your amygdala immediately spikes in activity, hitting the primal panic button. Why? Because for millions of years on the ancient savanna, our ancestors were not the apex predators. We were the hunted prey. Sight 1. The night belonged to giant hyenas with bone-crushing bite forces, and predators perfectly adapted to stalk humans in the pitch black. Sight 1. Your innate fear of the dark is essentially your brain's ancient weather app, constantly predicting a 100% chance of predators. Sight 1. So, if our biology actively screams at us to hide from the night, how did the Romans build a restless, thriving megacity? The first part of the answer lies buried deep in the archaeological dirt. Millions of pieces of baked dirt, to be exact. Archaeologists excavating Roman ruins have uncovered an absolutely astonishing number of lucernae, small, mass-produced terracotta oil lamps used by everyday citizens. Sight 1. These were definitely not luxury items. They were the cheap, highly disposable batteries of the ancient world found in almost every single home. And the fuel powering this massive lighting network? Olive oil. It wasn't just for food. It was the literal electricity grid of the empire. Sight 1. Every evening, countless tiny terracotta flames flickered to life across Rome, pushing back the terrifying void and creating small, fragile islands of safety. But a tiny lamp only illuminates a few feet. It could not protect you from a hidden mugger, and certainly not a raging inferno. To truly survive the night, Rome needed something completely unprecedented. It needed a desperate software patch for a city that kept crashing. Sight 1. In a city filled with endless fire hazards, Emperor Augustus, who established the Roman Empire around 27 BC, realized something drastic had to change. Sight His eventual solution was the creation of the Vigiles, an organized night watch of thousands of men patrolling the dark. Now, despite what modern movies might lead you to believe, these men were not exactly police officers hunting down thieves. Their primary overriding job was far more critical to the actual survival of the entire city. They were firefighters, with small water buckets, heavy axes, and the legal authority to tear down entire walls. They constantly fought to stop spreading infernos. Think of these nighttime shift workers as a desperate software patch for a city system that was constantly on the verge of crashing. But even with the brave Vigiles roaming the alleys, the dark was still far too dangerous for the average unarmed Roman citizen. Most people had no choice but to lock themselves securely inside their cramped, windowless homes from sunset all the way to sunrise. So, trapped in absolute darkness for up to 12 hours every single night, how did they not just go completely insane? This brings us to a fascinating, deeply ingrained biological rhythm that our modern, artificially lit society has almost entirely forgotten. Because our ancestors couldn't completely conquer the night with light, they simply embraced it differently, experiencing what historians call biphasic sleep, Site 1. Extensive research, including sleep studies from the 1990s by Thomas Ware, shows that pre-industrial humans did not sleep a solid 8 hours, Site 1. Instead, they routinely slept in 2 distinct shifts. They would experience a deep first sleep right after dusk when the world went dark, Site 1. Then, they would naturally wake up for an hour or 2 in the dead of night to peacefully talk, read, or simply think, Site 1. After this quiet waking period, they would fall back into a second sleep until dawn, Site 1. But this forgotten routine reveals something shocking about us. It reveals something profound. For almost all of human history, we did not fight the dark. We synchronized our entire biology with it. The night wasn't an enemy to be defeated by a light bulb. It was a strict biological boundary we respected and adapted to. Today, we have finally conquered the ancient dark. We flooded our streets with LEDs, neon signs, and glowing screens. But in doing so, we lost something profound. We lost the quiet, meditative rhythm of ancient sleep that our brains secretly crave. We also lost the night sky itself. For a Roman citizen, the Milky Way was a nightly ceiling, a sprawling map of the gods. Now, thanks to extreme light pollution, a third of humanity cannot even see the Milky Way from their own homes. We traded the stars for streetlights, and we traded natural exhaustion for a relentless, caffeine-fueled 24/7 modern economy. Evolution gave every species a survival advantage. For us, it wasn't sharp claws, but the incredible ability to adapt our society and bodies. When we couldn't see the predators, we built fires. When the fragile ancient cities burned, we built the Vigiles to watch over us. And when the dark was simply too long to wait out, our brains literally split our sleep in half to help us cope. So, the next time you wake up at 2 in the morning and reach for your glowing smartphone in pure frustration, remember that you aren't an insomniac failing at modern life. You are not broken. You are simply a very ancient human, experiencing the midnight waking hour exactly as your ancestors did for countless millennia. History is always rewritten as new evidence emerges, and some details remain debated, which makes the past an endless, fascinating mystery. Subscribe to Primal Mind, and next week, we will uncover another incredible secret hidden deep within our human origins.